Hello, everyone. I'm Emily, and once my mother became rich literally in an instant, but our family continued to live very poorly anyway. That is, I didn't get anything out of her becoming wealthy. Yes, it's possible. This will seem a little confusing to you, but I'll try to explain everything. I wasn't even 3 years old when my mother had to raise me on her own. My dad was the captain of a ship, and unfortunately, he left for a voyage and never came back. Mom never told me the details. She just said that Dad wouldn't ever return. Up to that moment, we were well off, and my mother could afford to be a housewife. After that, my mom was left alone to raise a child by herself and had to go to work. You understand that after staying home all her life, it's difficult to find something that pays well, so our finances took a major hit. Many years later, my mother came home one day with bags full of expensive purchases. I was very surprised and asked her where it all came from, but she only said that she received an award at work. It was very strange and completely unlikely, but I decided not to bother my mother with questions. You never know what miracles could happen. If someone doesn't want to tell the truth, that's their right. However, surprises like that one started happening all the time. About twice a month, my mother began to come home with a bunch of expensive purchases. And of course, I began to wait and hope that she would buy something for me, but it never happened. Then I said directly, "Mom, I want a new phone." She told me I didn't know the value of money and that she wasn't going to spoil me. As a result, my mother's spending on me didn't increase at all, but she clearly didn't skimp on herself, buying pricey jewelry, high-quality clothes, and good shoes. I was very upset. Once I took my mother's expensive new ring to school to show off to my friends. I wanted to show everyone that I wasn't poor like everyone thought and that my mother and I were doing well, you know? However, my mother immediately noticed the loss, and in the evening, a huge scandal awaited me. Mom said that no one should know about our wealth. To my question, why, she said that jealous people could jinx us. It sounded almost insane, especially since Mom was never superstitious. A lot of very scary thoughts began to appear in my head, and I wanted to figure everything out. So the next time she went to work, I started looking around the house for something that could explain her behavior and the source of money. I had no concrete idea what it might be, but my mother recently ordered a safe, which is about to be delivered to us, and when it's delivered, I definitely won't be able to find out the truth. So there was only a little time left. I turned my mother's room upside down. It took several hours for me to find a letter at the bottom of a box of Christmas decorations. It was from my father's mother, that is, from my grandmother. In it, she wrote that she was congratulating my mother on the addition to the family and sending us children's things as a gift. And I might have thought that it was about me as a newborn, but the letter was written only 6 months earlier. What did this even mean? What addition? What things? Did she know that Dad was gone? I decided that I should tell my grandmother everything, but I didn't know the details of my father's death and decided to go to the pier to find out everything about his disappearance. I was sure that some of the sailors remembered him and his story. I went straight there, but no one was eager to talk to me. Soon I saw the lonely figure of a one-legged old man. He seemed familiar to me. I didn't know how I could know him, but something told me that he would agree to talk to me, and I decided to approach him. As soon as the old man saw me, he immediately recognized me. As it turned out, he was my father's assistant and visited me and my mother after my dad disappeared. So that's how I knew him. It turned out that I saw him at our house many times. I was so lucky to have run into him. I asked the old man about my dad's last voyage, and he agreed to tell me everything. It turned out that on that ill-fated day, their ship got caught in a storm, and everyone except my dad survived. They still don't know what happened to him because his body was never found. At that moment, I had a crazy thought. What if Dad was alive? I thanked the old man for his honesty and decided to tell my grandmother everything. I didn't know her and had no idea what she looked like, but I decided to try to find her on social media by her first and last name using that letter. On Facebook, I found only one match and a completely empty account. There were no other people with that name, so I decided to write to her. "Hello, my name is Emily, and I think I am your granddaughter. Can we have a little chat?" The person on the other side of the screen read my message almost immediately, but didn't answer. I was extremely nervous and waited. I waited for 2 days, and only then did I receive an answer. She said that she would be waiting for me tomorrow at the old clock tower on the outskirts of the city. She also wrote not to tell anyone about it. This answer was stranger than anything else. If this was my grandmother, then why all the secrecy? And why couldn't she just answer my question? And what if this was just a complete stranger? After a little thought, I decided to go ahead and go to the meeting after all. My curiosity was stronger than my fear. I was at the appointed place 5 minutes early. My heart raced as I thought about seeing my grandmother and finally getting to know her. I was thinking about how I would tell her that my dad had been missing for a long time. I also wanted to ask her why she hadn't tried to talk to me before. I was very excited and was counting down the seconds, but no one showed. 15 minutes later, I felt someone approaching me from behind. Sharply turning around, I saw a smiling man with a teddy bear in his arms. I was in shock. All I could think to say was, "Grandma?" realizing how stupid that sounded. In response, the man laughed and said that he was my father and that he was very happy to see me. I began to frantically think back to the photographs of my father that we had at home and try to find similarities between the man in the photographs and this guy. And then goosebumps ran through my body. It was him, Dad. The surge of feelings overwhelmed me. I hugged him tightly and started to cry. I began to say that I missed him so much all these years and that as a child I waited for him every day. Dad was also touched by this meeting, but he said that we couldn't stay here for long and offered to take a walk along the riverbank. Then I found out that he was an orphan. I never had a grandmother. That letter and account were all his, and soon my dad told me why it was so necessary. During their last voyage, he and the team found a treasure chest on a desert island and immediately took it with them, agreeing to divide the loot equally among all the crew members. However, a little later, Dad happened to overhear his crewmates talking about how they planned to throw Dad into the sea so that they wouldn't have to split the treasure with him. He was scared and decided he shouldn't hesitate. On the same night, Dad escaped from the ship with the chest in an inflatable boat and sailed to another uninhabited island where he spent the next 2 years. He understood that they were looking for him, and if they found him, he was finished. And then he moved to another mainland where he lived for a while. It was impossible to contact my mother since our family was under close supervision. However, at the first opportunity, Dad contacted Mom, and then he sent her that box, allegedly on behalf of my grandmother, in which there weren't any children's things, but a bunch of money that Dad rescued from the sale of part of the jewelry. And that is why my mother had to hide our wealth. Oh yes, and my parents were connected only through that Facebook account, and even there they could exchange only encrypted phrases, imitating the communication between mother-in-law and daughter-in-law. When Dad told me the whole truth, our path was suddenly sharply blocked. It was that one-legged old man who lied to me the day before that my dad had disappeared from the ship during a storm, and next to him were 2 more stern men. "Well, Jack, so we meet at last," said the old man. At that moment, Dad took my hand tightly and said that everything would be okay. In the next instant, a car stopped abruptly next to us, from the window of which my mother shouted to us to get in quickly. I had no idea that I could react so quickly, but in a matter of seconds, we were already inside the car. Mom said that we would never return home and that from this day forward, we would have a new life. She also said that before leaving for the meeting with my grandmother, that is Dad, I forgot to sign out of my account on the computer and she was able to read our messages. Otherwise, meeting with Dad's former crewmates would hardly have ended well for us. Well, that means I'm not fit to be a special agent. Soon we arrived at the airport and flew out in an hour. It doesn't matter where. The important thing is that from that day on, we began a new life and our family was reunited. Living with my dad turned out to be very interesting and cool. He is very funny, has a lot of interesting stories, and loves me and my mother very much. I hope that now our family will be happy and nothing and no one can disturb this peace. And now we don't need to hide our wealth. I started at a private school, dress in nice clothes, have the coolest new tech, and even a purebred puppy. Sometimes I can't even believe that all this happened to me, just like something out of a movie. Do you think my dad did the right thing by escaping the ship with the chest? Write your answers in the comments. Like this video and subscribe to our channel.